I want to welcome you to our first ever webinar on YouTube. I'm here today to talk with the coalition partners. To my left is William Shagnon, also known as Bill, and he represents the Ask Me um, Local 2480. And to my right is Attorney Chester, Eric Chester, and he's from the Ferguson, Doyle, and Chester law firm, and he's our chief negotiator. And to his right is Dennis Boguski, president of the AFT Local 1942 FTCT. And just to clarify, Bill is president of the Ask Me as part of our coalition. So today what we'll do is give you an overview of the contract negotiations as they stand currently, and we'll be answering questions throughout the overview, and if you have any comments throughout the broadcast, you can just submit them to us and we'll see them. So without any further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Eric Chester so that he can give us the overview.
Good afternoon, and let me just start by saying it certainly is an honor and a privilege to represent the membership of the coalition. And if I could just take a second to say that I began my higher education at Norwalk Community College quite some time ago before transferring to a four-year institution, which is now still part of the same system as Southern Connecticut, and then going to law school. And my sister also graduated from Naugatuck Valley Community College with her RN. So I do have, I think, an understanding of how important the system is, the service it provides, and the importance of the employees who actually provide that service. Wanted to begin by giving you an overview of the history of the negotiations to date, how we've gotten to where we are, talk a little bit about currently where we sit in the negotiating process, and then talk about how we go forward, what comes next. Specifically, I'll go over the arbitration process in the likely event we find ourselves in arbitration. We began the negotiating process, the dates escape me, perhaps back in February, I think it was. We've had approximately 10 meetings with representatives of the Board of Regents. We did start the bargaining process with a rather large negotiating team, and after a couple of meetings we decided that it would be more efficient and more productive to have a smaller team as we move forward in the negotiating process, and I believe that decision has proven to be well-founded. We have made significant progress in the negotiations, and we'll highlight some of that progress. I believe, as Brian has shared in a number of his chapter meetings, and perhaps Dennis and Bill have too, that we have come to a tentative agreement on a number of issues. And just to highlight some of those, one is we've come to an agreement on the portability of tenure throughout the system. And again, just generally, we have an agreement with the Board of Regents that if someone is ever involuntarily transferred from one campus to another, their tenure goes with them. And if somebody voluntarily transfers with tenure, the decision by the accepting college to take that person, if they decide to take that person, they're taking that person with their tenure as well. So we view that as a significant enhancement to date. We've established a sick bank, which again, I believe Brian has highlighted some of that in his chapter meetings, and we view that as a significant enhancement as well. And most importantly, there are other elements of this tentative agreement, but the one thing I wanted to highlight, and to perhaps hopefully put some of your minds at ease, given the fact that the existing contract is expired, has been expired actually for quite some time, that one of the elements of this tentative agreement states that anything that has not been agreed to within the confines of that tentative agreement remains current and governed by the existing collective bargaining agreement. So there should be nobody out there that has the sense that because we're operating under an expired contract that we're not protected by that contract. We actually have an agreement that says the exact opposite. You are protected by that contract. Your working conditions are governed by that contract. So that kind of brings us to where we are now. And we continue to work towards arriving at other tentative agreements. And we had, just to give you a very recent update, we had a negotiating session this morning where we, again, reached a number of other tentative agreements with the Board of Regents. We view them all as enhancements. What we've done presently is we've kind of bifurcated the negotiations. We are dealing with non-economic issues primarily. And like I've said, we've had, I think, a great deal of success coming to agreements on a number of non-economic issues. As you all know, the state of the economy is not good, and the Board of Regents has been reluctant to engage us in economic discussions. But they have assured us in the coming negotiations that they will be in a position to begin bargaining those economic proposals. We have been, I think, successful in establishing a level of trust with the Board of Regents negotiating team. We've been able to have candid conversations with them, and I think that trust is built upon the fact that both parties understand that their negotiations will be held. We have been, I think, successful in establishing a level of trust with the Board of Regents negotiating obligation to report back to its members. So that is, in essence, what we're doing today. Regarding the economic issues, those we'll begin to discuss those in detail at our coming negotiation sessions, which I believe are, we scheduled those today in mid-October. We'll begin, rolling up our sleeves and talking about economic issues. Sessions, which I believe are, we scheduled those today in mid-October. We'll begin, rolling up our sleeves and talking about economic issues. Sessions, which I believe are, we scheduled those today in mid-October. We'll begin, rolling up our sleeves and talking about economic issues. Sessions, which I believe are, we scheduled those today in mid-October. We'll begin, rolling up our sleeves and talking about economic issues. Sessions, which I believe are, and that certainly applies to both full begins to wages and rolling up our sleeves and talking about economic issues. Sessions, which I believe are, Board of Regents, and that certainly applies to both full begins to wages and rolling up our sleeves and talking about economic issues. Sessions, which Board of Regents, and that certainly applies to both full begins to wages and rolling up our sleeves to the Board of Regents, and they, I think, appreciate that and understand that. One of the other economic proposals we've made and are continuing to advance forward is tuition waiver system-wide, not just within the community college system, but throughout the entire system. And that is throughout the state university system. And that is a major proposal that we continue to push forward on. The Board of Regents has proposed a change to the workload. As some of you may well know, they have proposed that full-time faculty teach the 5th course, and I know there's been a lot of discussion about that, probably amongst colleagues. We're not going to agree to that proposal, and there's been no indication from our side that we would entertain such a proposal. So in the coming weeks, we will have a better sense on the economic side of the negotiations as to how far apart we are, how close we can get as we approach potential impasse. In the event we're not able to get a global agreement, we will, pursuant to the State Employee Relations Act, proceed to binding interest arbitration. We've agreed to an arbitrator, Arbitrator Celentano, well respected. I think he's viewed by both sides as somebody who's straight down the middle. He will preside over the arbitration proceedings. And I want to take just a few minutes to explain that process and And we will certainly going to entertain questions at the end of the presentation. Um, the dates for the arbitration, they will begin in early December. And the arbitration is an administrative trial. There's opening statements. There's the calling and examining and cross-examining of witnesses. There's submission of exhibits by both sides. There's the opportunity to present expert testimony on any of the issues that are to be decided by the arbitrator. The number of hearing dates I would estimate to be between 4 and 5 days. What happens at the commencement of the arbitration process is that management will submit to the arbitrator its proposals on all of the outstanding issues, and the coalition would present its proposals on all of the outstanding issues. In addition to that, the parties would mutually submit to the arbitrator all of the issues that they agree on. Once that's been submitted at the outset of the hearing, you then essentially fight out over the outstanding issues. The party that's looking to make the change to the existing contract has the burden. It must produce and present evidence in support of its position to make the change from the existing contract. And again, that burden is carried by presenting witnesses, producing documents, etc. The arbitrator will hear evidence, enter and receive documents, receive testimony on all of the outstanding issues. And again, that'll take place over the course of 4 to 5 days. And those 4 to 5 days are not consecutive days. They take place over a period of time. As I indicated, we have a couple of dates scheduled in December, and we anticipate that there will be a couple of days also scheduled in January to conclude the arbitration hearing. Once the hearing has concluded, at the conclusion of the hearing, each party, the coalition and management, presents what's called its last best offers on each of the outstanding issues. This is your last chance to submit your last best offer on each of the outstanding issues. Those are submitted to the arbitrator, and shortly thereafter, typically 30 to 45 days after the conclusion of the hearing, each side's advocate, in this case for the coalition it would be myself, writes and submits a brief in support of its last best offer on each issue. Why we think we prevailed on each issue. Management does the same thing. What's important, I think, for everybody to understand is that when the arbitrator is considering which last best offer to award, the arbitrator cannot split the baby. He cannot decide that it should be something in the middle. The arbitrator must select either the union's last best offer on a particular outstanding issue, or he must select management's last best offer on a particular outstanding issue. So on each issue, somebody wins and somebody loses. There is no compromise to be made once the arbitrator rules. Regarding compromise, while you're in the arbitration process, it's equally important for everybody to understand that an agreement can still be arrived at during the arbitration process. There can be testimonies on one or more outstanding issues which may compel one side to rethink its position and agree with the other side's offer. That can happen. There can be continued dialogue between the parties. There can be continued negotiations between the parties while you're in the arbitration process. As I indicated, there are going to be a couple of dates scheduled in December. There are going to be a couple of dates scheduled, it looks like, in January. And in between those dates, the parties could certainly continue to engage one another and try to come to an agreement on some, if not all, issues. And that is not uncommon for that to happen. Parties can continue to engage one another even after the submission of the briefs. That can happen. And if the parties come to an agreement prior to the arbitrator rendering his award, those agreements can be forwarded to the arbitrator and become part of his award. So that is once the arbitrator has rendered his award, however, then it is certainly at that time out of the hands of the parties, in the hands exclusively of the arbitrator, where, as I indicated, there are going to be issues won and issues lost. How does the arbitrator decide? Again, one thing that I think a common misperception about arbitration is that an arbitrator would be inclined, if there are 20 outstanding issues, to award 10 to the union and 10 to management. It doesn't work that way. An arbitrator is statutorily required to render an award on each issue alone. And there are factors that he must use in deciding which last best offer to award. Such things as the history of the negotiations between the parties, the conditions of similar employee groups, the wages in the prevailing labor market, what's happening in the outside of the community college system, the employer's ability to pay, which is not a favorable statutory factor for us, and the interest and welfare of the employee group, what's in the best interest of the employee group, essentially. So those are that is the statutory criteria by which the arbitrator is bound on each issue. So while it is highly unlikely, it is certainly possible that applying that criteria, one party could win on every issue. The arbitrator isn't required to balance his award by issues. He's required to award on each issue based solely and exclusively on those factors, based on what he's heard during the hearing, what he read in the briefs, the documents that he reviewed. That is essentially where we are, what got us to where we are, where we see ourselves going. And we have I think some guiding principles that move us forward in these negotiations. We're looking to enhance the conditions of your employment, both economically and non-economically. We're looking guiding principles security, that move us forward in these negotiations. We're looking to enhance the conditions of your employment, both economically and non-economically, and the Connecticut State University system to the extent that we can. We're looking to get the best contract we can for the members. And I'm confident that we're moving in that direction. I feel good about the state of the negotiations to date. I think that they've been honest. I think they've been forthcoming. I think the negotiations have been made in good faith. And I'm optimistic about getting a favorable outcome.
Thank you, Eric.
Sure.
I did want to give each of the other presidents an opportunity to make a statement or add to what Eric has said already. Bill, did you want to say something?
Yeah, first of all, I apologize. We were a little remiss in that also part of this negotiating team is Kelly Rommel, my staff representative at Council 4. But also, Eric, I wanted you to take a minute, please, to address what happens after an award is arbitrated.
Sure. It gets sent. Thank you. I did forget to mention that it gets sent to the state. It's binding on the parties. Number one, it is final. It gets sent to the General Assembly. One of the other things I neglected to mention is perhaps an estimate as to when an arbitration award would be rendered. Again, if we're concluding the hearings in January, briefs submitted in February, with reply briefs due thereafter, you're talking about, best case scenario, an award in late March, early April. The General Assembly will be in session at that point in time. The award gets sent to the General Assembly for its consideration and its approval or rejection, which can happen, but I would imagine that's highly unlikely. But once the legislature approves the award, it is final and binding on the parties. It becomes the contract.
Dennis?
Yes, I'd like to thank all of you that tuned in today. And I know there's many of you that have tuned in from all three of our groups. It's, again, my honor and privilege to be here, and it's my honor and privilege to work with fine individuals such as Brian and Bill Kelly Barrick. I'm obviously the president of the AFT, and we had some goals when we set out on this mission, and I'm going to amplify some of the things that Eric has stated. Number one, equity. Equity amongst ourselves in terms of the three contracts. We know there's some disparity between them, and that's been a guiding principle for us, and I think we've achieved some of that, and we've been well on the way. We've had discussions that have been around those issues. And then on a bigger picture, an issue of equity with the state university system. Right? There's some things that we do a little bit better on, and there's some things that they do a little better on. And obviously we want those things that they do a little bit better on. One of the things we talked about this morning was emeritus status, incorporating it into the contract, and some of the things that come along with it. There is a board policy, but the board policy does not track the kind of things that are in the state university contract, and that's tuition waivers for that person that has emeritus, their dependents, etc. Office privileges, things like that. And that's an important thing. So those are the goals, and we've looked at each and every one of those things. In fact, in front of us, you'll see these 3-ring binders if the camera's picking it up. A lot of this is dedicated to our negotiating proposals and our negotiating stances. These negotiations have been honest. They've been forthcoming. They've been small. I have a negotiating team as well as you have. Kelly and Brian has some folks, and they've been a part of some of it. It's like some of you have been, the negotiating teams have been a part of some of it and not a part of some of it as well. And we've been able to agree on the things that we're not here to best each other. We're here to enhance each other's operations. Some things that we're looking at also are putting things that we were never going to resolve. There just isn't enough time, or we're putting them into study committees so that they're still on the table. There's groups that will be working on them, and they'll be negotiated and finished at a later point in time. The economic piece. Obviously, we want a great economic settlement. Come on, we all have bills to pay. We all have college tuitions for our kids, car payments, mortgages. That's an important thing. I mean, it's unacceptable to be taking zeros. So the only way we're going to take a zero is if we're forced into it. So hear that. The only way we're going to take a zero is if we're going to be forced into that, and that's going to be by an arbitrator. We're going to fight like hell to get money for each and every one of the years of this contract, whether it be 3 years or 4 years, and that's going back to July of this past year when a raise was due. Lastly, but not least, we have not negotiated a full contract in over 10 years. And why is that? Because the states come to us in the midst of our contracts and says, hey, listen, we're in a pickle here. We don't have money, and we're going to lay off a whole bunch of you. And you know that we've come to you in 2009 with the REL concession agreement and an early retirement incentive in it. We rolled monies here and there and did all sorts of things. We came up with money, and we had a contract. We rolled a contract forward. And we did that again in 2011. And I think did we do it again after that? Was it 3 of them?
Yeah.
It's 2 of them. Okay, it's the 2 of them. And the contract is rolled forward. So it expired in 16. We haven't had a chance to negotiate any items of this contract in the interim. Have we enforced the contract? Yes. We've had grievances. We've had arbitrations over grievances. And we've done well in all of those. We've done well. We had settlements. We've had meetings of the minds. We had every possible unfair labor practices. Whatever vehicles that are out there to use, we've used them, and we've been successful. And that doesn't mean beating up the other side. That means listening to each other and trying to make it work and trying to make sense out of things that don't make sense sometimes. So along the line in those 10 years, a lot of you have come to us and said, boy, it'd be great if the contract had this. Oh, it'd be phenomenal if the contract had that. We need to address these kind of things. And we said to you, we will. When we have the opportunity to negotiate a contract, we will. And that's where we've been at, all of us, Bill, Brian, members of the teams that have been there, and Aaron. And that's where we're at. I'm going to end my segment right here with I need something from all of you, though. And I'm going to take the time. On October 6th, we're doing something totally different than what unions do. Unions basically walk out. Well, on October 6th, we're walking in. And October 6th is a day of reclaiming our schools. And this is elementary schools, middle schools, high schools, and colleges. And we've done this in the past. Some of the grammar schools and the high schools in the state of Connecticut, I think a dozen of them did it last year. October 6th of this year is a national day to do this. So this is going on all over the country. Three Rivers, October 6th, noon. You know, it's almost like White Christmas. Be there at, you know, such or such time, put your uniform on, whether it fits or not. We need you to be there as faculty. Tell your students to come there. The issues that are outstanding are student loan debt. And what student loan debt? Tell me anyone that's watching this that hasn't been affected by either your own or your kids or somebody in your extended family or even in your circle of friends. Student loan debt. It's criminal. It's absolutely criminal that these people, young people, are starting their lives off where they can't buy a house. They've got loads of student loan debt just to become members, productive members of a society and to pay taxes. And on top of it all, that student loan debt is at ridiculous interest rates. Ridiculous interest rates. We'll give corporations an interest rate of 0.5%, but they're paying 8, 9, 10, 11%. We're not forgiving the loans. The only way you get out of these loans is to die. You can't discharge them even in bankruptcy. I'm not saying they will. Yes, there's some programs around it that help, but we need to increase them. We need to help out parent loans, student loans. So when I said everybody, you might have parent loans for those kids, folks. So on Tuesday the 6th, it goes like this. We have a short program at 12 o'clock, let's say 12 o'clock. A short program, maybe 20 minutes of speeches and introductions. And then we hold hands and we walk into the school. This is going to involve administrators, students, faculty, friends, anybody who wants to come. And we want a turnout. We need a turnout. We're the only college in Connecticut doing it on October 6th. The only college. So the more the merrier, and the better it will be. And it also puts the spotlight on that thing of student debt. In addition to that, there's two other pieces. Won't take as long as the student debt. But the two other pieces are as follows. Affordable tuition. And I have to give a little bit of praise to the management of this system for holding down tuition increases. I will give them praise for that. But we need to keep that. We need to keep that. And the only way we're going to keep that is to get adequate funding. And I think we're all in this together. Faculty, administrators, college presidents, board of regents. We're all in this thing together. So be there. Come up to Three Rivers, okay, at noon on Thursday, October 6th. Rain or shine. If it rains, we got ponchos for you. All right? There's seats. We're going to have chairs. And guess what? We'll give you a T-shirt, and you do get a lunch, a good lunch, with a piece of fruit, either a pear or an apple. All right? So please, please, please come up to Three Rivers on October 6th. Now, I'm going to shut up because you heard enough from me, but I might weigh in on a question or two as they come. And thank you.
Thank you, Dennis. That was a great pitch for that important event, and I hope that everybody who's watching today will tell somebody else about it, and we'll see lots of you there on Thursday, October 6th at noon, rain or shine. I just also wanted to emphasize what we had already talked a little bit about, and that is the degree to which we can improve our contract language. Over 10 years have passed since we've had this chance to sit down and negotiate improved language that will help us to represent contract language. And so, that's been our focus right now because economics really have not been part of the equation. But as Attorney Chester said, we will be engaged in those discussions, we hope in October. So more information to follow. Maybe we should talk about some of the questions. Then.
You may want to mention again if people want to type in comments to the YouTube box. That's how we'll get their questions live. It looks like we might have about 32 people watching right now. So if any of those people have questions that they'd like to type them into the box, I can let them know.
Okay, sounds good. And that voice you're hearing is our communications director for the 4Cs, Ellen Benson, who's been instrumental in helping us to stay organized in our negotiations. She's been there at every session, taking notes and keeping us sane at times, and we also have this wonderful 3-ring binder in front of us. Thanks at every session, votes in keeping us throughout the week, and has been so helpful in keeping us ready to answer your questions and to deal with all the multitude of issues that we're now engaged in doing. So,
And I'm just not sure if everybody heard what Ellen had just said, if the microphone picked up her voice, but she had indicated that if you have a specific question, I believe there's a box to the right of the screen on the YouTube channel where you can type in that question, and we'll do our best to answer it.
and we did have some questions come to us in advance of today's presentation, and I'll let Attorney Chester address them now.
Sure. One of the questions related to whether or not we had made any proposals or attempts to get a tuition waiver that would apply system-wide for employees and their dependents and not be limited just to within the community college system. And the answer to that is yes. And I think I alluded to that initially, that yes, that is a proposal that we made. It's a proposal that remains on the table. It's a proposal that the board, again, and I have to say, we all need to be cognizant of the fact that this video conference we're engaged in is public. It's in the public domain, and we have to remind ourselves that we are still in the process of negotiations. And as I said, and as Dennis has said, we want to maintain the level of trust and the good faith negotiations that we've been involved in. So we have to be careful of that as to what's been agreed to or what signals they've sent us and what signals we've sent them. But I can say that the proposal has been made. It's a position that we continue to advance, and it's something that we remain optimistic about.
Very much so.
We had one question come in through YouTube, and it's Lisa from Naugatuck Valley. She's asking if you can provide the members a list of the items we have proposed. I know it's pretty extensive. I'd like to guide people to our website. It's the 4Cs, 4cs.org. And if you look under issues, there's a tab called contract negotiations. If you go to the very first issue of the negotiations news, that has a list of most of the items we have proposed. If there's anything specific that you're asking about a proposal, maybe you can email another question in about something specific.
Can I address that as well? The Federation has a website as well, and we will put up on our website within the next, let's say the next week, by the time we get it up, we'll put up a list as well of the proposals that are out there. Again, I want to amplify with what Eric said about the sanctity of negotiations and how negotiations take place as well. They're not secret. There isn't a cone of silence, but there is an integrity of the process. You don't negotiate and run right out and brag about it. You work till you get to the end of a contract. You share information. You get ideas for membership. You work it out, and then it all comes out. The actual language comes out and everything else. This is how negotiations have been done in the past. Sometimes even in the past, we've had a ratification meeting. As you know, with the concession agreements, there's been ratification meetings, whether it be on campuses or in a common place, so people could ratify the contract. I have one other thing. I have two other things I want to say. On the October 6th, and I'm not going to beg anymore, but I will say, please come to October 6th. Maybe one more time by the time this is through. But this is being done not only by AFT, but by also the AFSCME and the 4Cs, and they've been very instrumental. We've all worked together to make this happen. You know, we want to see a good crowd here. We're going to have press and everything else. There's going to be politicians in the crowd. We're not going to let them speak, though, because this isn't their campaign speech time, but we will acknowledge them. But we need a crowd out there, so be there. The other thing I wanted to talk about is it has come up as a question from nurses, all right? And this is a proposal we have on nurses. And I made a promise, and I think we're all committed to this, and that is to stop the inequity. Nurses currently, clinicals, are working 60 minutes, and they're being paid on the basis of 50 minutes. To this, they're working, and that is to stop the inequity. No, our contact hours are 50 minutes. And how that escaped through time Okay, God, I have no idea. I have no idea. I do know that in the nursing reopener, we brought this up and we were unsuccessful. Why? Because the economy was tanked and the arbitrator said, look, you're right, it's an equity issue, but they don't have the money to pay for it. And the board fought like hell over this. Again, this was the old board that was not as receptive to higher education, not as respectful of the of the college professor. You know, it was looking for every penny they could steal. All right, so they could pay themselves even more. But we're not seeing that in these negotiations. But that's a big issue. As much as that equity on tuition waiver is a big issue, this is a big issue. This is a gender issue. Most of these nurses are female. These nursing instructors are female, and they're working 60 minutes and being paid for 50 minutes worth of work. We are committed to addressing this either through negotiations, and we've had some small discussions about it, or through arbitration. But for every nurse that's out there, know that this issue is a priority for us as well.
I understand another question that was presented in advance of the video conference is what, if anything, is the coalition doing to advance the interests of adjuncts, which is a growing demographic of the membership. And as I indicated in my initial remarks, the leadership certainly appreciates that, and we have impressed upon the Board of Regents that the number of adjuncts continues to grow, and you know the cost benefit of that to the system, but more importantly, that it's a growing number of our constituents who we represent and are trying to get the best deal for. So yes, we've made affirmative proposals to significantly enhance pay for adjuncts and as well as working conditions, including access to affordable health care. Again, this is, you know, how receptive the board is ultimately to this. On the economic side remains to be seen. We will finally delve into that in the coming negotiation sessions when we get into the economic part of it.
The part-timer also brings something else to the table. And it's not just us representing them. They work in the industries for most cases. So they bring some I'm tied in right now. I work in this industry and I teach, and they bring that to the table as well. So not only do we value them for the cost benefit, but for the kind of things that they bring to the table. We recognize the importance. Our national groups, SEIU, AFSCME, and AFT have been after this for years. I mean, there's been a campaign to enhance working conditions for part-timers, you know, to look into issues as sick leave and tenure and those sorts of things. They're not our second-class citizen. They're citizens just like all of us. And we've made, over the years, substantial improvements, and we want to make more so that we have equity for these people. These are our people.
The other guiding principle on that piece as well, in addition to what Dennis said, is we're looking to do all that we can to try to migrate part-timers, special appointments into the principal bargaining unit. A number of these special appointments have been employees for a number of years, and we're looking to do all we can to figure out ways to be as creative as we can to get these people job security and to get them into a tenure track position. So we have a number of proposals on the table that attempt to do that in a number of different ways. So we are very cognizant of the needs of that particular constituent. We're aware of it, and I rest assured that the Board of Regents is aware of it as well.
And part-timers are invited on October 6th as well to come up to Three Rivers.
Okay. So a couple of other questions might be addressed?
Yes, there was one, just looking at it again. Oh, there was one about what's being done to address the decrease or lack of increase in enrollment throughout the system. And that, quite frankly, really has not been, it's something that we're all aware of at the negotiating table. It's certainly in our interest, in the union's interest, to see enrollments climb. But it's more of a policy issue, certainly something that needs to be looked at, and unions are certainly interested in doing all that it can to increase enrollment. But there's little that we could do as far as bargaining the contract to increase enrollment. Which Dennis has reminded me politely why we need more people there on October 6th to further bolster the face of the system and increase enrollment.
Right, if I could just add to that, there is a direct correlation between our enrollment numbers and our ability to reach out to the communities. And, you know, as people retire and positions are not filled, that limits our ability to have direct student contact and service those new students and retain them. So this is why the 6th of October is so critical, because we need everybody to get out there and say it's time for more support to the community colleges and the state university system. At this time, we are seeing rescissions. We've been seeing a decrease in funding for years, and that is a time, you know, that has to be looked at as the past, and we need to start reinvesting in our community colleges and higher ed in general. So that's my little appeal for more help. You want to add anything, Bill? Okay. Are there any other questions coming in, Ellen?
Let me check again. There have not been. I do remember an emailed question that was asking for snow days for EAs.
I think that's an economic issue at this point.
I think we got an agreement on that.
We did get
That we have an agreement on that. Yes, we have an agreement on that. That when college is closed due to weather, that no employee, full-time, part-time, or anybody else for that matter, will suffer any loss in pay as a result of that college being closed due to inclement weather or some other type of natural disaster.
There was one thing though, that's only if they show up on
October 6th.
October 6th.
Coming the October 6th webinar. Yeah, so I guess if there's nothing else, I mean, I don't want to wrap it up prematurely, but if there are any other statements that should be made?
I'd like to use a wrapping up statement.
Okay.
It's important for all of you, every member of AFSCME, 4Cs, AFT, part-time, full-time, special appointment, whatever, to take a moment and reflect on your employment and reflect on the kind of things that the unions have done for you to make your employment, your place of work, a good place to work. These are good places to work. We are constantly working to improve them. I think at the same time as you reflect on that, you also need to turn around and wish us well as negotiators and be there in spirit for us, because we do these things because we're all together in this. All of us work in the system as well. We're not our good well as negotiators. I'm from Norwalk. Bill's from Norwalk. Brian's from Tunxus. We have some release, some union release to do these kind of things, but we all work with students and for students in the system. So we're affected by these same economics. We're affected by the same working conditions. And the thing that makes us tick, makes us feel good about what we do, and that's an important thing, is your enthusiasm, your support for us, and you with us. In other words, you got our back, we got your back. Thank you.
Eric, we did have an additional question come in, and they're asking if you could summarize the other non-economic issues that have been agreed to in the TA.
Sure. Give me 1 second. Here's a big one, and Bill was a big proponent of this, and it's kind of goes along the lines of trying to do all we can for every person in all of the bargaining units. Time on special appointment will count towards tenure and promotion. That's big. We talked about the snow days, no one suffering a loss in pay or accrued time if the college closes is due to a snow day. We We made some modifications to the promotional process, nothing that would increase or substantially change the promotional process, but we actually streamlined it some. The sick leave bank, which I've mentioned, which we view as a significant enhancement. We made some enhancements to the use of professional development, more clearly defined what is included in professional development. We agreed to, I think Dennis alluded to this, that there are some issues that are more complex than others that would take kind of a separate forum to really resolve. We don't want to hold up the entire contract for these, but we talked about setting aside a committee to discuss and formulate proper job descriptions for department chairs and program coordinators. What else? There's going to be another committee working on figuring out what the best practices are to properly accommodate employees for maternity leave, paternity leave, those types of things, child rearing, and also distance learning as well. We've talked to the board about establishing some type of criteria to get people properly trained, keep them up to date on the latest technology, compensation for teaching the online courses, etc. And the board has been receptive to that as well, to having a committee of our members as well as management work towards coming up with a list of recommendations as to how to address that. I think that is probably a summary of most, if not all, of the agreements we've reached in the tentative agreement. And then I could just say, not to sound braggadocious, if that's even a word,
Some circles.
but one thing we were able to agree on, and I mentioned earlier, is that in the tentative agreement we signed to date, it says in there that anything not addressed in the tentative agreement remains consistent and governed by the existing contract. And we were one of the first ones, this coalition was one of the first ones to get an agreement like that. As you may know, a number of the state bargaining units are in negotiations, and they've really used that as a model in their negotiations as well, which is a good thing.
We had another question come in. Have there been any changes to the part-time lecturers pool? We call it the seniority pool, to that process.
We have made a proposal on the part-time lecturer pool, and the board, again, understanding that we're in a very public forum right now and not everything has been put to paper, but we did make a proposal on that issue. The board has been very receptive to that proposal, and as recently as this morning during our negotiating session said that they're receptive to it and they wanted to get back to us with perhaps some minor modifications to our proposal. But yes, we have a proposal on that which will, we think, provide an increased level of job security for part-time lecturers. Yep.
That's it for the questions online at this point.
Okay, very good. Well, if there isn't anything else to add, I'm looking to you, Bill. Do you want to summarize anything?
Thank you for tuning in and watching, and for accessing this later at your own convenience. So I guess it can be viewed on tape too, and be assured that we are doing our best to represent you well at these negotiations.
Absolutely. And I want to thank my coalition partners who came today, especially Dennis, who wants to say something, I think.
Yeah, I got to say it one more time. October 6th, Three Rivers Community College.
Right.
Lunch, t-shirt, couple speeches. You're going to love it. Be there at noon.
It's worth it. It's gonna be worth
And bring people with you.
Right. And just before we sign off, I want to echo what Dennis said, how important it is for you to remain, you as our members, to remain engaged in this process. With the 4 Cs, we send out weekly e-news updates. Please continue to watch for them and read them. We have a Chronicles, a fall version coming out, I think next week. So that'll be in your mailbox, well worth the time to read. And just thank you so much for your support, and we'll continue to represent you as best as we possibly can. And thank you for your tuning in today.
Thank you for the honor and the privilege.